Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing the second video on the key to inner healing, and we're going to be talking about topics that inner healing covers. The first video we talked about childhood trauma and attachment issues and how that affects the way that we see the world and how we navigate life. Today we're going to be talking about toxic shame. So sit back, pull out your pencil and paper, and let's deep dive into what toxic shame looks like. See if you recognize any of these character qualities in yourself. The best way to get healing is to just recognize that you have a wound and it needs tending to. I want to read this quote to you. Guilt is a feeling you've done something wrong. Toxic shame says there is something wrong with me. Think about that. I have grown up, honestly, my whole life feeling like there was something really wrong with me. I couldn't shake that feeling. In fact, sometimes I still struggle with that feeling. Why do I think like this? Why do I react like this? Why can't I just be like everybody else? If that is something that you're struggling with, perhaps you are dealing with toxic shame. Toxic shame can be difficult to fix because it comes from childhood experiences. When we talk about our childhood, it actually feels like there's nothing we can do about it because we really can't go back into our childhood and redo it. So it feels a little hopeless and it feels counterproductive. Like, well, what can we do about it now? But the thing about wounds is that you have to get to the core of the wound. And if the core starts in childhood and you have integrated experiences, you have to go into that and uproot from the ground up what the issue is. Let's say you get triggered today and you don't understand why you're getting triggered when someone does this certain thing. And you don't realize the root of why you're getting so triggered is because it's bringing up an emotion that you had in childhood of being forgotten or left behind, whatever it may be. It's really important to get to the root of things. That's why we end up going back to childhood. I don't want any of you who are listening to feel disempowered by the fact that we're going back in childhood, because there is something we can do about it. If we're able to recognize this came in through childhood, if we just push it aside, then we can't address the issue and we're not going to get the help we need. That's why we're going here, okay? I have a reason why we're doing this. I highly recommend this book. This is what this teaching is based on, things I'm learning in this book. Make sure you get yourself a copy. We can all learn along together. Toxic shame can cause you to seek power to feel more valuable. When people are dealing with life through shame-based experiences, they feel disempowered. A lot of times, people who grow up with that toxic shame end up being bullies. I actually have a person that I deal with on a regular basis that shares with me they actually enjoy being a bully. They're a manager at their job. They have to snap themselves out of lording it over people. They're a Christian and they say, why am I like this? Well, I think it all kind of goes back to childhood. If you were shamed as a child and you never dealt with that issue, you could be reclaiming your power by trying to shame someone else. And for me, personally, I can see in my life where the toxic shame and seeking power to feel more valuable showed up in a way where I chose to be a stripper. For me, it felt very powerful to feel like I have control over men, right? It made me take back some of the things that had happened to me, being manipulated in this place. I had the power. I can see this very clearly in my life where toxic shame came in through and how I tried to take dominion over it by choosing a job where I was the power player. That's where it showed up in my life. I'm just giving you examples from my life because that's all I can do. Did you know that toxic shame will cause you to seek perfectionism, to avoid shame and exert control? I can personally attest to this in my life. I have trouble sometimes getting a lot of things done because I want things to be done a certain way. And in my head, it has to be like this. I have to backpedal and say, does it really have to be like that? Is this acceptable? And it's not about being sloppy. It's just pumping the brakes and saying, am I taking this to the next level? If we're dealing with toxic shame, it's important to see if there's a little correlation between the two. So you can kind of slow down and look at things through a proper lens, a lens of reality. What is acceptable for the actual thing we're dealing with? We don't need to go this far with it, you know? So let's talk about toxic shame and the feelings that it brings up. Feelings of being inadequate, inferior, unworthy, flawed, defective, worthless, failing, and falling short. I read that list and I can check every single one of those. So I know personally for me, toxic shame has been activated in my life. People with toxic shame think that others will reject, gossip, or criticize them. And yes, I definitely struggle in this area. When you believe there's something wrong with you on an organic level, your sense of self is completely eroded. It's hard for you to be vulnerable. It's hard for you to put yourself out there. As I mentioned in the first video, children who had parents who weren't emotionally connected never had anyone to mirror who they were, okay? Let's say you're a little kid and you're crying and your mom is just looking at you like, what do I do with this? Or she's just shushing you down, trying to get you to be quiet because she's embarrassed. She's not actually meeting you where you're at, feeling your pain, understanding what you're going through. It's really in service of her. In that scenario, that child felt shut down, that they couldn't express their emotions. They didn't feel connected to their parent either. Their parent wasn't mirroring to them what they were feeling inside. So then they organically feel something's wrong with me. I'm really upset and no one else is upset. I'm dealing with this on my own. Do you understand how you feel alone, rejected, denied, not good enough? All these things come in because you weren't being mirrored what you were feeling. This gave you a very shallow understanding of who you are because our parents are supposed to be reflecting who we are. If you're not being mirrored, this will give you an inaccurate belief about who you really are. The reality is your childhood is over. The only person who can do anything about your life right now is you. That's why we're doing this series. I'm helping to empower you to understand the way your brain works, the way your emotions work, the way your past works, so that we can actually do something about it today. I want to teach you a little something about what neuroscientists have to say. The brains of children who do not feel safe experience pain. So if you didn't feel safe in your home environment, and by safe, I don't necessarily mean that you were being or threatened. It could have been your parents just ignored you, so you didn't feel emotionally safe to open up. I want you to start thinking about safety not in extreme ways. Yes, of course, if you were you're going to have issues, but also too, if you were ignored, you're going to have issues as well. And a lot of times what we do as adults is we talk ourselves out of our problem. For me, there were issues in my home where I did not feel heard or valued. In a child's brain and in their body, if they're not getting emotional support, they are being abandoned. Children are created to depend on their parents, and when their parents aren't showing up, they actually are abandoning them. Don't discount your childhood and say, well, this person had it worse than me, so I shouldn't be upset or I shouldn't be feeling this way. You're judging yourself, so you're not able to fully accept that you need to work on this area and get healing on this area. You're saying, well, I'm not as bad as this person, so I must be okay. That is bypassing the most important thing for you to get the healing that you need. Neuroscientists also say your brain records your parents' actions at their worst. This is just the way the brain works. It's not you just trying to filter through every issue with a negative lens. Our body is kind of set up to protect ourselves. When we have a scenario that makes us feel unprotected, we're going to organically remember that. It's going to be frozen in our brain as an experience that we don't want to repeat, right? Because we don't want to experience that thing again, it takes a snapshot of what does that feel like. And our body actually remembers that trauma and that abandonment or whatever. That is something it remembers as a warning sign. So this never happens again. Let's pay attention to any sign of this ever happening again. That is a safety mechanism that the Lord built inside of us. If we don't understand that's the way that our body does things, we can be in a constant state of anxiety and not know how to regulate our emotional state and be kind to ourselves when we go back into a childhood trigger and we're having an issue currently. It doesn't make sense like why I exploded like that, but to your body it makes sense because your body is being reminded, hey, the last time something like this happened, it was extremely traumatic, and we're feeling and seeing signs of something very similar, so let's just go back into protection mode. I hope this is making sense. These painful memories have a way of imprinting our brain to cause fear and shame for future events. When you're living in fear of having more pain, this will cause you to live on the rim of life, to not not really go deep and experience life, but just be on the safe side of life. For a lot of people, a word, a facial expression can cause them to be triggered in shame. How do we get rid of toxic shame? I hate to say this, for all of you people who like to bottle things up inside, you got to talk about it. It's true. How do you get rid of poison? You got to flush it out, right? When we talk about things, we give our brain and our body a chance to process what we went through. You know why I feel like talking about our issues is so hard? It makes us vulnerable. Second of all, a lot of us have never ever felt we've had someone safe to share those deep things with. Or when we did share, someone actually used that as ammunition against us, and that caused more shame. Then we shut down even more. I came up with a personal solution for people who are struggling in that way. What I've done for myself is when I'm processing through something, I will talk to my audio notes. I'll speak to my phone as if it is my friend. I'm in a safe place and I don't have to edit myself, and I just share my feelings and my experience and what I'm going through and why I'm thinking this thing and what is coming up for me in my past. All those things I just pour out in an audio message, and then I listen to it. I give myself the airtime that I need. It's important to actually verbally process our stuff because it helps our brain to categorize things and to put things in perspective. I really believe that the more that we express ourselves, the less it gets bottled up inside. Of course, the best thing is to have an actual friend that you really trust, that you can be vulnerable with, but sometimes that's not available. Or sometimes the people that we do have in our life, we don't want to overburden them, right? We might have so many issues, we can't do that every single time we're feeling a certain way. It's important to be aware too of how to honor your friendships. I don't like to overburden my friendships, so there's a meter that goes on inside of me of like, you know what? I think maybe it's time for me to process this on my own. That is a sign that healing has already been happening, because I don't need to throw my burdens on someone else to get unburdened. I can be an adult and do that on my own. I'm not saying if you need a friend, you're not being an adult, because I've grown in this area. I'm feeling more integrated. I'm feeling more like an adult because I'm taking more responsibility on my own instead of having to be codependent on someone else for my healing. So this verse actually confirms what I just said. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Talking about your shame is important for you to be getting free. Confess your sins to one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. James 5:16. In an ideal world, I suggest creating a reparenting group. This is a safe space for you to process through your emotions. All of us kind of hide a little bit because we want to keep or gain respect from others. If we just air out our dirty laundry, we know deep down inside there will be some people that will judge us. The thing that sucks is that we never have a chance to reveal our pain and to let the truth in, and to let people who love us care for us in a way that we actually need them to show up. I just wonder how many people out there who have friends that actually don't have any friend that they can open up to and really reveal themselves to. And that to me is the saddest thing, because what's the point of having a friend? I enjoy going out to coffee and hanging out and doing things, but what really constitutes a friend for me is if I can count on that person to care for my heart. That is what a friend really means in my book. It's not about entertainment. It's not about doing the latest and the greatest and the coolest thing. Maybe it's because I'm a nerd, but I would rather have a person that I connect to heart to heart, that I trust and that I feel has my back any day, than going to Disneyland with someone who doesn't care about me. Consider the people that are in your life. Are those people that actually have your back? Are they really your friends? I've noticed in my own life that sharing my issues disarms pride. It helps me to stay humble. Hey, I'm struggling with unforgiveness. It kind of tears down the walls of having to keep our stuff together. It allows us to truly be seen and loved for who we are. That's what we want. We want someone to love us, warts and all, right? I prefer to be polished. This is just the way that I've always been. But John actually likes me best when I've got my hair thrown up in a bun, I have no makeup on, I'm in my pajamas. That's actually how he prefers me, which is insane to me because I prefer to see myself more polished. There's something so comforting about being with someone who sees you in your most vulnerable state and they think you're beautiful. Like, what? I don't think I'm beautiful, but you do. I begin to look at myself in a way that I never would have if I wasn't seen like that, you know? And I think that's so important for our friendships. For us to really go deep, we have to really be seen, which means we have to be brave and be vulnerable and share the warts and share the things that are ugly about us. The reality is, a lot of us have ugly stuff. In fact, all of us do. It's only the people who pretend like they don't that will never get the deep and good friendships and support that they actually need. The more that you share, the freer you become. Until you've actually experienced expressing these repressed emotions is actually so healing. When you let that go, it literally feels like a ton of bricks has been taken off your back. There's something very incredible about being able to express yourself. The Lord wants that. He says that He wants us to take things out of the darkness and bring them to the light. He says in His word, confess your faults before one another and pray for one another that you may be healed. That is key. That is healing. That is God giving us a clue on how to take care of ourselves and each other. When you share enough of your stuff in a safe group of people, that shame can't hold you back anymore because people are going to speak truth into you. I really hope you enjoy this series and that you stick around to hear part 3 that I will have for you next week. Stay tuned and I will talk to you guys later. Take care.